Hello, and welcome to What in the Mystical Hell podcast. I'm your host, Nikki Jobin. Parenting is one of the best and worst things that you can experience in your lifetime. Our children bring us immense joy, yet challenge us constantly. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. But what happens when the complexities of parenting combine with our metaphysical lives? That's my topic for today. For those of you who don't know me well, I'm a mother of 4 as well as a practitioner. Not an uncommon thing, so in this episode I want to explore how parents today balance it all. Work, their practice, and all the nuance that come with having children. And for those of us that are professional witches, how do you keep that work-life balance? I'd also like to talk about magical children and the gifts they possess, especially if those gifts are different from our own. Out of my 4 children, only one is truly interested in the craft at this time, and she has abilities that have really offered unique challenges in our home. When I was a kid, it seemed like the magical and the mundane flowed together seamlessly. I didn't grow up with an outwardly magical family. Actually, they were really Catholic. But we had superstitions and rituals that were a part of our everyday life, taught to our family through the generations and brought to the new world. From the braid of garlic hanging by the windows in the kitchen to the cross palm leaves nailed next to the exterior doors, those are the things that my maternal grandmother did to keep us safe. She was one from El Salvador, and while I didn't know this growing up, I later came to find out that she read tarot cards in the old country. Now, it was all very official. It was sanctioned by the church. She would do it on Friday evenings at 6 p.m. Now, I personally never saw her read any tarot cards, though. She'd read playing cards. She'd deal out some cards. We'd be playing solitaire, and then all of a sudden she'd deal out some cards, and she'd tell me things. And she'd also go to pray. My grandmother prayed about 4 times a day. But sometimes when she'd go to pray, she would come back and she'd tell me really specific things. And those things always came true. Now, at the time, I thought my grandmother had a direct line to God. And though I feel a little bit differently about what constitutes God now, I do believe she had a connection to the divine. Over in my mother's house, though, where I lived, we didn't have a lot of traditions to speak of outside major holidays. The only superstition I can actually remember is throwing spilled salt over your shoulder for luck. Nowadays, I'm the grown-up, and I have my own house, so I control the narrative for our family traditions, and they're not at all the same ones that I grew up with. There's no crossed palm leaves. There's no garlic braids, or there are garlic braids, but they're only used for cooking. I still throw spilled salt over my shoulder, but I also ward my house and spiritually cleanse it to keep us safe from the things that go bump in the night. And these are the things that I teach my little witchling. And I teach her the why. I teach her why we wash the floors and cabinets with rue and Florida water. It's for luck, prosperity, and to purify our home. I teach her why I smoke cleanse our rooms with frankincense, sandalwood, and rosemary. That's for protection. I don't use the term smudging because that's a closed practice, which is not one that I'm a part of. I also don't use sage for my home. If I use it too much, I don't really like the smell. I don't know what that says about me. I also teach her why I cleanse the windows and the mirrors with ammonia, and then I ward them. No portals in our house, thanks. If you're unfamiliar with the term, warding is a way to magically and spiritually protect your home. I started teaching my youngest daughter a little bit earlier than I intended because she came into gifts earlier. So if your child starts exhibiting gifts at a young age, especially if those gifts deal with the spirit world, teaching them how to protect themselves, very important. I plan to have a future episode talking about warding and the specifics for different dangers. Other traditions in our home include setting up the ofrenda for Dia de las Muertas and honoring the ancestors during Samhain. We honor many deities in our home, and it's my responsibility to help my children understand why. It's also important that I let them know my way, it's not the only way out there, and that their personal paths may differ really a lot from mine, but that all of our paths are equally valid. We have to teach them the how and the why of things so that they can make informed decisions later in life. It's not my job to tell them what to think, but it's my job to teach them about all things in the world around them so that they can choose their own way. When my kids were small, we used to take walks in nature, and I teach them little lessons, lessons about the elements, lessons about the nature that was around them, about the animals that were around them. I don't even think they remember that. Now that they're a little older and my youngest is, well, gosh, she's a teenager now, I teach her things like freezer spells for bullies and how to make anti-anxiety spell jars. Balancing witchcraft and parenting, it's going to challenge you when you're teaching young minds, honestly. I'm not going to lie. When my daughter was first dealing with bullies, I wanted names. I was going to hex the shit out of these little fuckers. But she wasn't having any of that. In that instance, she was my teacher. I had to learn to temper down my reactions and remember that my mama bear mentality didn't always make the right call. So I sat down and I thought about what would help my daughter and be empowering at the same time. Freezer spells are great because we spell the behavior rather than the person. It was empowering for her because while she isn't always comfortable speaking up in the moment, freezing the behavior, that can also help other people that are in the bully's path. And then mini spell jars for anxiety, they're really good because they're a physical manifestation of the actual spell, and they're empowering for her to make. Now, everything I teach is not all about empowerment, of course. Since we're now in the teenage years, I plan to teach her the dangers of love spells and manipulation magic. One of the things that I really do appreciate about the world that we live in now is that consent culture is a really big deal. And knowing how consent works in relation to spell work, that should help her make some, or keep from making some mistakes. And honestly, they're mistakes that I made. And I'm pretty transparent about the mistakes that I've made with her too. I do give her the chance to work on her own spell work. And recently she actually surprised me. She's an artist and she frequently draws on her hands and her arms. She was showing me some of what she had drawn on her arm and wrist. And she was showing me sigils that she'd drawn. Oh, Mama, this is the sigil for this, and this is the sigil for that. I hadn't even realized she'd been researching sigils, even though I do use them quite frequently for spell work. So future lessons will include creating and using sigils in spell work. Kids are like sponges, and sometimes I really forget that she can research all the same stuff on the internet that I do. The hardest thing about balancing witch and mom life is when I do work of a darker nature. I obviously, I have some of that work that I do for clients, and I do try to keep that away from my kids as much as possible. But when you have a curious teacher, when you have a curious teenager, it's not always easy. She has an interest in all things witchy and spooky and, might be a little bit of a dark soul like her mama. She's also naturally curious and she's very well read. I have to be really specific and tell her exactly which books she's not allowed to read yet. Fortunately for me, we have a pretty open, communicative relationship, and she knows that she can ask me questions and I'll answer them honestly, or I'll tell her why I don't want to answer the question. I believe that trying to keep them away from the dark magics, just like drugs and alcohol, can backfire if you're not open and honest with the why. So, what do you do if your child has gifts that you don't possess and you really don't know how to control? That's something that their dad deals with on a daily. While he is a follower of the Norse path, he's not a practitioner at all. His usual go-to is, ask your mother. But not everyone has a person to ask for answers. And sometimes I'm stumped too. So the first thing I recommend is to listen. When your kids are telling you things that seem a bit unbelievable, listen to understand. Yeah, it could be their imagination, right? We all have imagination. But it could also be a manifestation of their gifts. When my daughter was younger, she used to tell me that she'd hear voices calling her name. Sometimes it was my voice, though I hadn't called her. And sometimes it wasn't voices that she recognized. My immediate response was to tell her, don't get in the habit of listening to any voices. Don't get in the habit of doing what they're saying. If she thought I was calling her, I told her she could either come find me or call to me loudly. At the time, we lived in an apartment, so I was usually within hearing distance. Now that she's got a phone, of course, she'll text me, Mom, did you call me? I have on occasion experienced clairaudience myself, so I didn't dismiss what she was saying. But I also grew up on tales of fairies luring children out of the house and taking them. So I'm better to err on the side of caution. I had an aunt that used to tell us stories about the fae, and she would tell us that the fairy figurines on her dresser were alive, and that they would tell her, that they would tell her when we were being naughty. Somehow, she always knew. So maybe they were. To this day, my daughter will hear things that we do not. And though sometimes one or another of us will hear it too. So there's that. She also has other gifts that have come out. She can heal. She's been able to take away her sister's headaches, but I don't really allow her to do that anymore. I want to wait till she's older. I just think that it'll take too much out of her. Especially if she does the thing where I do, where she tries to take the symptoms and then ends up giving them to herself. Not so fun. She's had conversations with her patron goddess, who is Santa Muerta. Summoning. She has accidentally summoned things into the house. That was really fun to deal with. Which is why we now cleanse our mirrors and ward them. Elemental magic. She is very, very dialed in to the element of air, and she can do some kind of fun things that you wouldn't expect with the element of air. She also seems to have empathic tendencies, but I'm not really sure, I'm not 100% sure if she is an empath or just extremely sensitive to the feelings of others. Different children will have different abilities, and if you have gifts of your own, more than likely your child will share those. But genetics being what they are, abilities can skip a generation. And sometimes an ability will manifest that has never before been a part of your family's history. At least, not that you know of. So here's a few abilities with brief descriptions. There's clairvoyance. Clairvoyance means clear vision. This refers to the ability to gain visual telepathic information about an object, a person, a location, or a physical event through means other than known human senses. So it's often called extrasensory perception, or ESP. In pop culture, if you've ever seen the show Charmed, the youngest sister Phoebe, she has visions. That's clairvoyance. Clairaudience, which we've kind of talked about already, that means clear hearing. It's the ability to perceive sounds or words from outside sources in the spirit world. Psychics who are clairaudient, they can hear voices, sounds, or music that are not audible to the rest of us. They receive these messages mentally or within their ears. Clairsentience. This means clear sensing. It's the ability to feel the present, past, or future physical and emotional states of others without the use of the normal five senses. So psychics who are clairsentient are able to retrieve information from houses, public buildings, or other outside areas. Two ones that you don't hear a lot about: clairalience and clairgustance. Clairalience refers to a psychic's ability to pick up on external impressions through the sense of smell. And clairgustance refers to the ability to receive outside information and psychic impressions through the sense of taste without actually putting something in your mouth. So if you've ever seen those paranormal shows where they say that they're, we're investigating a demon, right? They've gotten reports of a demon in this place and they're investigating it. And sometimes you will hear that they maybe taste rotting meat, or that they smell sulfur. Those would be examples of clairalience and clairgustance. Now, just to clarify here, I have never met a psychic or a practitioner that has either of these two things where they can control it fully and use it purposefully. Now, I have heard of people having instances of this where they'll get phantom smells. They'll get a weird taste. If you've ever been in a situation where, you taste iron in your blood and you feel like you taste, or not iron in your blood, iron in your mouth, or you feel like you taste blood, but you're not bleeding in your mouth. Or you get the smell of, maybe just randomly you're in a room and you get the smell of your great-grandmother's perfume. So we have instances, right? We have reports of instances of this. But I've never met a psychic to date that has control over these two things. Next, we have empathy. Empathy is the ability to read and understand people and to be in tune with or resonate with others. Sometimes it's voluntary, other times it's involuntary, especially for someone who's a natural empath. Empaths are hypersensitive people who experience a high level of compassion, consideration, and understanding toward others. Their intense empathy can create kind of a tuning fork effect. So the empath seems to really feel the emotions behind them. My business partner, Diana Rachel, actually is an empath, and she teaches workshops for empath. And she says that sometimes she feels like if you've ever had a lollipop that you've dropped and it's kind of rolled around and then it's covered in dirt and hair and whatever it picks up off the ground, she says sometimes that's really what she feels like if she's not actively protecting herself. Telekinetic. So psychokinesis, from the Greek word mind movement, and telekinesis, far off movement, are defined as the production of motion in objects. So it's by like a spiritualistic medium without contact of or other physical means. So another pop culture reference, if you've ever seen the movie Carrie, when she's throwing things around the room. She's not touching anything, they're just flying around the room. That's an example of telekinesis. Psychometry, also known as token reading or psychoscopy. Now, this form of extrasensory perception gains knowledge about an object's history by making physical contact with the object. And the premise here is that you don't know anything about the object prior to this, but there are psychics that can touch something and get a physical impression of something that has happened to it. Telepaths. A telepath is someone with the ability to read the thoughts of those around them, and in some instances, be able to communicate via thoughts. They say, or not they say, but if you've ever been in a relationship with like a best friend, a partner, a family member, where you know what each other's thinking and it seems like you're able to read each other's thoughts, that's a form of telepathy. Psychic mediumship. Now, this is pretty cool. Mediumship is the practice of mediating communication between familiar spirits or the spirits of the dead and the living. So if you've ever heard of the spiritualist movement or the spiritualist church, we actually have a few of those in San Francisco. These kind of center around mediums. So you come to the church, and it's not like a regular like Catholic or Christian church, I don't think, where you have like a sermon. I'm sure they address you in some form, but then they have members of their congregation that are mediums. And they come forward, and sometimes they have messages from the other side for people. I actually had an old coworker a few years back that was a medium in a spiritualist church in Santa Cruz. And I always told her, oh my God, I've never been there. I really want to experience that. Like, I've never experienced that. I would love to see what that's all about. And she was like, totally, come down whenever, but just so you know, I don't pick and choose who comes to talk to me. I don't pick and choose who comes to talk to you. So don't freak out if it happens. If, she can't say, oh, I'm looking for someone who wants to talk to Nikki. She's just like, someone will come up and they will, they'll, say whatever they're saying, trying to connect to their living person that they're trying to connect with. It could be me. It could be somebody else. Now, I, on the other hand, said, well, just to be fair, on the flip side of that, I won't freak out. But I don't know what's going to come and talk to me, so don't you freak out either, right? Actually, one of my mom's dear friends is also a member of the spiritualist church. And while I have not yet had the opportunity to go to one, that is a future experience that I really do hope to have. Now we're getting into some kind of some psychics with some energy flow. First, we have light energy workers. A light energy worker is a person who's undergone a spiritual awakening and feels called to illuminate the dark places in life. Light workers are often empaths, old souls, and highly sensitive people that have a strong connection to their soul's voice. An example of a light worker can be a Reiki healer. So Reiki healer, uses the energies of the universe to kind of help heal people or also read people. I had a friend that was working on her Reiki degree, and she used me as one of her guinea pigs, and she actually saw things about me that she didn't know, but everything that she saw, right on point. Alongside light energy workers, we have dark energy workers. Like light workers, there are those that work with the energies of a darker nature. Now, dark energy workers are not bad or evil by nature, but they work with elements that are deemed dark, such as the dead. A dark worker isn't the opposite of a light worker, and they're not like necessarily a psychic medium either. But they're kind of complementary and very necessary. So a light worker, such as a Reiki healer, as I said before, they will use the energies of the universe. They will flush out darkness. A dark worker draws away the darkness that's already present and manipulates it to become more manageable. A fun fact, I am a dark worker. And while my light worker counterparts in Reiki use the energy of the universe to flush out that darkness or get rid of it, everything that I do, ultimately it comes from the universe, but I'm not pulling energies of the universe to do this. It all comes from me to get rid of things or to try and tap them down enough and help people control them enough so that they can move on with their lives. Because sometimes that darkness is necessary, but it just needs to be in a more controllable form for them to be able to work through it or move past it. Lastly, we have psychic vampirism. A psychic vampire or energy vampire is someone that feeds off the life energy of another person. The term can be used to describe a person who gets increased energy around people, but leaves those other people exhausted or drained of energy. Now, psychic vampires are also not necessarily bad. Yes, there are people that know full well what they're doing. They know that they're feeding off people's energy, and they do it without consent, and they just kind of roll with it. But I will say that most of the psychic vampires that I know work through a very set path, they have very set rules about how they do this. And when they share energy with others or take energy from others, it's with someone that they trust and they have full consent. Or they're ambiently feeding off of energy that's just kind of floating around. So if you've ever been to, let's say like a basketball game or a concert, and there's just so much energy in the air that you can feel it, that's a type of energy that they can feed off of as well. So they're not actually taking energy directly off of a person and causing them to lose their energy. It's just that excess of energy that we get because when we're really excited about something that just kind of floats off of us and is just kind of lying around. This isn't really a full list. I mean, I know that there are other abilities out there that I'm not thinking about and that I haven't probably even discovered yet. But these are a good starting point. And in future episodes, we can definitely dig deeper. Do you have an ability that I haven't listed? Please shoot me a message because I would love to know about it. Now, these abilities don't have to be labeled good or bad. I know we like labels. We're humans. We like labels to understand things, but they're not either. We make the good and bad choices. So the power there lies in the choices that we make and how we choose to guide our children, especially, if they have an ability that is normally perceived of as darker. I'm currently working on some workshops for magical and non-magical parents to help manage their children's emerging abilities. Once our kids know how to focus and control their abilities, they're usually fine, but the beginning can be really, really chaotic, especially when those abilities manifest early. One of the most important beginner steps is teaching our children how to ground and shield. Shielding is really important for the kids with abilities that are rooted in the spirit world. Oftentimes those abilities can make a person a beacon for non-corporeal entities. It's kind of like you're in a dark room and there's a little candle at the other end. And the stronger the ability, the brighter the shine. So of course, we want to go and be illuminated. Entities are like that too. Some entities want to go to the light because they want to snuff it out. So it's really important that we learn how to protect ourselves and our children. Grounding is also important because it connects your body to the earth and it helps you bring balance to both your physical body and your emotions. Once you have that firm foundation, the process of learning how to control the abilities can begin. Right? Because you've got that foundation, you're feeling balanced, you have your physical body and your emotions under control. And believe me, when your emotions are out of control, it definitely is going to affect how you're manifesting and controlling your abilities. A good way to ground, a good thing to do to ground is doing yoga. Doing yoga with your kids, it's a great way to help them learn to center and to ground and become more aware of their bodies. Being more aware of your physical body can help regulate your metaphysical abilities. Because again, you have that foundation. You're set in stone, and the craziness can't necessarily topple you over, right? It's really important to remember that learning control, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight, especially for kids, right? We think about with our children about potty training or watching them learn to crawl and learn to walk. It didn't happen overnight. It took its time, and it happened in its own time, right? We try to help them. We want to encourage them, but ultimately they have to do it in their own time. Learning control of your abilities happens that way too. Which is why it's important for us to learn how to shield them while they're learning to shield themselves and learn how to help them ground. What if your child is neurodivergent? Having a child that's neurodivergent has its own set of challenges, especially for neurotypical parents. In the lore, neurodivergent children were thought to be changelings, children of the Fae that were switched out with human children. Believing their children to be non-human helped parents of the time explain their odd behavior. Now we just know that their brains work in a different way. This has to be taken into account when helping them learn to manage their abilities. The protections that we put around them, they have to be stronger because these children, they shine even brighter in the metaphysical world. Their brains are more open to possibilities and they resonate at a higher frequency. So that shine, that little candle that we have at the other side of the room, it might be a floodlight for these kids. And there are things out there that want to use that energy. You know, they want to take that energy so that they can manifest themselves. So we have to know how to protect our children from that. If this all becomes too frustrating or overwhelming, take a break. You know, breaks are important when you're learning how to do anything. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. And it's okay to be frustrated. It's not okay to take your frustration out on others. And that's something that we have to teach our kids too. What about if it's just too much? What if you feel like you can't control it? You're at your breaking point. You can ask the universe to put a block on the ability until they're ready for it. If it's your ability that you're learning to control, you can ask, can I put this away until I'm ready for it? Now make sure you include the when they, when we are ready for it, so the ability doesn't disappear completely. Having that buffer though can be really important. You know, in young children, I guess they maybe used to call it binding their abilities, but it's not really a bind. It's just kind of asking the universe to put it away in a little closet until we're ready to play with that game. I don't believe abilities are given to us lightly. The universe does everything for a reason, even if we don't know why at first. And believe me, I have questioned gifts in the past. I'm like, what the hell are we doing? What? And I'll say, I've asked for things and then been like, whoa, this is a lot. But a lot of times when I question these gifts, it was out of fear or imposter syndrome. I didn't think that I deserved the gift, or I thought that a mistake had been made, or that somebody else would have been a better fit. But as I progress through this journey, I've come to the realization that every ability I've been given is uniquely suited to my temperament. And I'm coming to see that for my daughter as well. This parenting journey is not for the faint of heart. The added challenges make the rewards even sweeter. Knowing that you're helping your child feel more in control of their world is probably one of the best feelings there is. We can do it. We doubt ourselves. I think we wonder as parents constantly, am I making the right decisions? Am I doing the right things? We make the best decisions that we can at the time. But if we try to make decisions with open minds and open hearts, we'll be doing the best that we can for our children. That's all for this episode. If you like what you're hearing, drop us a comment on social media. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram page. What in the Mystical Hell? If you don't like what we're hearing, I don't mind hearing that. You can tell me, unless you're a troll. If you're coming around trolling, stop listening. Please let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. You know, don't come on and be a dick, right? Don't be a dick. A couple of housekeeping and gratuitous plugs. We are attached to the Golden Apple Metaphysical Patreon. You can sign up to our Patreon to get lots of Golden Apple goodies and exclusive podcast content. So I'm working on those now, and I might have a couple of anecdotes that I didn't share in this podcast about my child's experience and my own that are going to show up in that exclusive content. You can find us at www.patreon.com. I can't remember if it's backslash or / I'm the worst at that, but that's / you put in there. Golden Apple Metaphysical. I will also be putting this in the episode descriptor. If you have questions, comments, personal experiences, what the hell are you doing, Nikki? You should be doing anything else with your life. Please email them to me at whatinthemysticalhell@gmail.com. Again, this will be in the descriptor. You can find us at www.goldenapplemetaphysical.com. That is our shop website. I also have a podcast page there and some of the other things we're doing, including when you can catch us at conventions, when Diana's having workshops, when I'm doing shit that fits in with my weird shit-o-meter. Thanks for listening today. This has been another episode of What in the Mystical Hell podcast, where our children drive us batty, and when things go bump in the night, we know how to bump back. Bye.